I popped this special edition PS4 Pro open looking for spare parts, but what I found on the inside made me wonder if maybe it deserves its own cleaning video. The initial surface level inspection on this machine makes it seem like the number one story here is going to be the residue from the stickers on this shell. But as much as those will be satisfying to try to clean up, the story is definitely inside here. So let's get this taken apart and I'll show you what we're dealing with. If this is your first time joining me here, my name is Rob, and I at Restorish work with Steve at Tronics Fix, who focuses on fixing things where I focus on cleaning them. I'm going to pull these little rubber washer things out of here so that we can clean them separately. I do want to point out that this particular model of PS4 Pro has a fake screw down there in the middle. Don't try to take it out, it's just a bit of plastic. Some pressure up here on these corners, and then a little couple points to release so that those clips can come up, and we'll be able to get a look at this. Here is the reason I thought this might make for an interesting video, because once I got this shell off, I saw these clumps of dirt that are kind of full and matted with pet hair. And I'm thinking, I bet a lot of people might have this sort of a situation going on inside of their systems if you own pets. These types of video game consoles have a tendency to attract and pull a lot of dirt and air through them as they are moving air through the system in an attempt to keep them cool. And if you have pet hair that's just kind of floating around your house, like a lot of people do if you have animals, this is a pretty common thing, I think. Let's look under the power supply here. Not too bad. Taking a look inside of the power supply itself, there are a few clumps that have kind of gathered, and so we're going to try to remove those as well. I think the PS4 Pro was kind of the trial run before the PS5 on how many screws they could use to hold this plate down. Want to make sure to trip that gate before we pull on that cable. Exercising an abundance of caution as I pull this plug out. This isn't a big deal on the disassembly, but when we put this back together, we do want to make sure to go back and forth on these screws so that it tightens down evenly on that thermal paste. This cable that connects to the power supply can catch if you haven't already fully removed it. And here's a good look at the other side of the motherboard, which is quite a bit dirtier than the side that we were seeing. Another very common place to gather that dust is here in the heatsink, and it's no exception. Definitely have some clumps here. I'm going to physically remove those, the visible parts at least, and we have another collection there right where the fan meets it. The fan actually doesn't look too bad. I've been finding it very common for these disk drives to actually be way cleaner than the rest of the system on the inside. It's just a totally different area that doesn't have the same air movement going through it as the rest of the system. We're going to take absolutely everything apart here for the purpose of our clean. Kind of an interesting design how these sort of set into place in the back. You just kind of have to fill it out, but they come out real easy. You shouldn't have to force this. There are a couple more screws in here that I'm just going to remove for the purpose of cleaning so that I don't rust those screws out. But this last piece here is kind of stuck in here in a weird way that I'm worried about breaking these thin clips if I try to get it all out of here. So we're going to leave it together. Alright, I've given all these plastic parts about a 15-minute soak in this Dawn dish detergent warm water bath. And now using this paintbrush, I'm just going to kind of give the first level of clean. Probably going to need to do a little bit more in some of the areas, in particular on this gray plastic where there's some staining on here that just isn't going to come up from this level of wash. But this definitely is a helpful process for the first part of what we're trying to do here, to get this all clean and like new as possible again. We're definitely going to need something more in order to remove the residue from those stickers off of here. I saved this one for last. And as I figured, it's nice and satisfying seeing that dirt come up there. I'm realizing I probably could have used a little bit more soap in this one, so we're just going to add it in even though it's at the end here and most of it's already been cleaned. But just for the sake of this piece, let's get a little bit more sudsy. Alright, I think that does it for what was inside of here. Let's move on. I'm going to use a vacuum here on most of this stuff to just remove that first layer of dust and dirt because it's pretty thick. Some people have hesitation to use a vacuum cleaner on electronic boards like this because of the risk of static electricity shock causing some sort of a short. But in the 2 years that I've been doing this and the 10 years that Steve has been doing it, neither of us have ever had an issue with that. If you're not convinced, I'd encourage you to look up Linus Tech Tips video on this where they had a electrical engineer who intentionally tried to damage a board using static electricity and found that it was a very difficult process that you have to be super intentional about to cause any harm. I am being careful with this to make sure to not scrape too hard or anything with these bristles, but the bristles on this particular part of the vacuum cleaner that I'm using are no more stiff than the bristles on the toothbrushes or cleaning brushes that I use and will use after this anyway. So one thing I will caution, or at least make you aware of, is these little pads that I forget about sometimes when I'm cleaning, and then you end up removing them with the vacuum cleaner. So be careful around those. This is just so much dust buildup and dirt that if I try to attack all of this without removing it first, at least that surface stuff, it's just such a muddy mess. So I like using this vacuum cleaner first because it takes all that dust and it removes it, but it doesn't just put it in my shop. So this at least puts it inside of my vacuum cleaner container instead of just throwing it around my workspace. Just being careful around these ribbons. Okay, now that we've done that level of clean, I'm going to go over everything again, but this time with my electric air duster. This is just going to push that dust and kind of throw it around my office, but there's a lot less of it now, and this is going to be able to reach places that the vacuum couldn't, because the vacuum has to be a lot closer to stuff in order to affect it. The power supply here will give us a good example of that, how I'm able to get to some of the dirt inside of there that the vacuum couldn't with this air duster. If a person wanted to, they could disassemble this power supply as well and clean it probably a little bit better. I, however, don't like to do that with the power supply because there is a risk of shock with any power supply that has been connected to electricity anytime recently, and I don't like taking that risk, nor do I want to model it. So unless you really know what you're doing and want to take that risk, I wouldn't recommend it. And even at that, I probably still wouldn't recommend it. I tend to replace the power supplies that are in that much need of clean, like the ones that have cockroaches inside of them. Now that we've done that level of clean, I'm going to start going over everything again on a different level. So with these kind of metal plates, I'm going to use my microfiber cloth with a little bit of glass cleaner on it. I have some IPA here that I'm using on this toothbrush to clean some of these smaller bits. And I'm going to use a makeup brush here. I have found that that works really good for that, just that kind of dusting level of dirt that's just stuck on there a little bit, but doesn't really need a scrub. So a little bit of IPA on the makeup brush, and there's a lot of this that's going to be able to get most of the good cleaning done with that. A little bit of IPA on the corner of my microfiber cloth here just to help scrub some of these spots. You're going to have to take my word for it on this shot, but I am cleaning in between all these blades with a cotton swab and IPA. A little bit of IPA on these pads that I accidentally knocked off with the vacuum, and hopefully they'll be able to stick back down there and stay at least enough for me to be able to get it reassembled. And hopefully that does the trick. Let's remove this old dry thermal paste. We'll end up replacing it. Back to the makeup brush on our motherboard here to clean some of the areas that we have a little bit of corrosion and stickiness. And it's going to be a long process, so we'll just keep showing you little glimpses here and there of what we're doing. I'm using my BW100 to just kind of jet spray inside of these ports to help irrigate them out from any dirt that's stuck inside of there. We're back to these plastic bits that we already washed in the soapy water, but there's still some dirt residue and other stuff that just didn't come up from that level of clean that we're going to get with our microfiber cloth and makeup brush and IPA. I will always be grateful to Peter from our Discord for giving me the recommendation of using these automotive cleaning wipes on this plastic. They do a really good job. It was a good call. When you're scrubbing with anything, whether it's one of these cleaning wipes or the cotton swab or even something a little bit more abrasive like a magic eraser, there is going to be a risk of damaging the plastic underneath or the finish that's on the plastic. There's something really stuck on here. I'm just kind of feeling it with the pick there. So it's going to take a little bit here. I'm using just a bit of a magic eraser on here to try to get whatever was stuck on there. But eventually we're able to get it, and looks pretty good, and I don't think we did any damage to the plastic. But cleaning works from abrasion, whether it's chemical or pressure based. It's going to do something. So there is a little bit of risk involved when we get to this level of trying to get something off of here. I would always suggest that you work small, start in some place that isn't seen or on the surface, and make sure that the process that you're using isn't going to cause an irreversible damage that you feel bad about. Boy, whatever was on here, it kind of etched itself down into the plastic, and so we're going to have a little mark there. I did not cause that. Okay, for the sticker residue on this shell, I'm going to try using some Goo Gone. That has been really helpful to me in the past with kind of breaking down the adhesive and allowing it to be wiped away. So I'm using a paper towel here to just spread it around a little bit, make sure that we're saturating all of this. Now we'll use that same paper towel to come back to this and see if we're getting any of that to come up. And it looks like working right here that with this light pressure we are able to remove some of that. The nature of the sticker residue being stuck on here and the artwork that is kind of imprinted on top of this plastic made this almost impossible to clean and get removed without taking a little bit of that color behind it. I'm not entirely happy with how this turned out. It may have been the best that I could do under these circumstances, but I think we can find a better method in the future. All right, let's get this thing put back together. It wouldn't be a PS4 reassembly if I didn't forget to put the battery back on the board. Little spot I missed here. I have a little conundrum with this cable because the little blue guiding thing came off, and I thought it may be okay just to put it back in there without it, but it needs that tension in order to stay in there. So I'm just going to put the cable in and put that blue thing back on top of it, and I think that will hold it in place good enough. And it was at about this time that I remembered that battery. So disassemble, get the battery in here, and now we are good to go. Alright, I've plugged this in, tried it out, messed around with it for a while, and unfortunately we have the blue light of death. But hopefully not all is lost. I have another idea. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that the whole reason I got into this system is because I was looking for spare parts for another project. I have another PS4 Pro of the same model that just happens to not be a special edition, so it has the normal black case on it. If I can get that one working, I might just be able to do a shell swap and make my own special edition. So hopefully that'll be my next video. If I've already done that project by the time you come across this video, I'll leave a link in the description for you that you can go check it out. Before I let you go, I have one more thing I want to bring up. Here at Restorish, we are always looking for uniquely gross and dirty items to clean. If you know of something or have something that you think might make for a good video for us, I'm going to leave a link in the description where you can start a dialogue with us here at Team Tronics Fix, and who knows, maybe somehow we'll be able to help each other out. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. And then just do a simple cell.